Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Jay. Big news to report in the world of professional wrestling. Tony Khan announced last night on AEW, on the episode of AEW Dynamite that he has purchased the rights to Ring of Honor from Sinclair Broadcasting. Ring of Honor, of course, have been in existence since 2002. The was like a third tier wrestling promotion based in the Northeast. It was originally started by Rob Feinstein in order to make up for the loss of ECW. When ECW went out of business in 2001, Rob Feinstein, who used to do these shoot interviews, who basically started the shoot interview game where he would have candid discussions outside of kayfabe with professional wrestlers. And most of them were from ECW, and they were distributed by ECW. When they went out of business, he didn't have no other outlet that would service that. So he created, in an effort to supplement that, he and Gabe Sapolsky created Ring of Honor. Then in 2011, Ring of Honor was sold to Sinclair Broadcasting, and the problem I always felt with and it became this huge phenomenon. It was a huge phenomenon in the mid 2000s with people, selling their, purchasing their DVDs, buying their DVDs, and telling their friends about it. Just like how ECW was an underground phenomenon in the 90s, ROH was that in the 2000s. They um, showed like a lot of the talent that you see right now in WWE, like Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. Those are the type of dudes that were lighting it up in Ring of Honor years ago as El Generico, as Kevin Steen, Tyler Black, Davey Richards, etc. Like almost everybody that's a main roster player right now in WWE or even in AEW was, you know, in Ring of Honor, in the mid 2000s. But one thing about them, though, similar to ECW, they could never hold on to their talent. It was a small promotion, based out of the Northeast. And their sister promotion based out of the West Coast, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, was similar to that. But they could never really hold on to their talent. Their talent would always sign for move on to greener pastures like TNA or the WWE. And it was never outside of the hardcore fan base were they ever able to gain a huge following. Somebody had to tell their friends about Ring of Honor, and then that's how they would get into um, Ring of Honor, just like with ECW. But anyway, last night, Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, announced that he purchased the rights exclusively to Ring of Honor. And this sort of parallels the purchase of WCW by the WWF in 2001 because he comes out saying he's going to make this big announcement. And we're coming up on March, the anniversary of the closing of WCW. So, it's like history repeated itself. He comes out, makes this big announcement, said that he's purchased the rights to Ring of Honor. And one line he says, everybody's chanting Shane, Shane. And he says, no, no Shane, just me. Because again, people call back to when Vince McMahon did the simulcast. And then Shane come on and says, the name on the contract does say McMahon, but not Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon. And Shane has just left the WWE. So people was like, okay, he's going to come out on Dynamite and he's going to premiere on Dynamite. But this is huge news. They purchased the library. They purchased the all the rights to it, all the classics that we remember from Ring of Honor, like the Samoa Joe CM Punk Classic in 2004. They have the rights to now. I don't know what they're gonna do with it because AEW doesn't have a streaming service like the WWE. So if the WWE had bought the rights to Ring of Honor, I would have been like, okay, that's cool. They're gonna put it as another thing on Peacock, right? For the hardcore devoted Ring of Honor fans. I was never really that into Ring of Honor because, again, like ECW, I didn't have access to that. You know what I mean? I never went to a Ring of Honor show. I knew Ring of Honor in passing when I would see them online, you know, but I wasn't a devoted Ring of Honor person. At that time, I was in the mid 2000s. I was a casual I was a casual wrestling fan, a casual WWE fan. So I just caught WWE. I really never watched TNA really like that. I really wasn't even into the WWE all that much in the mid 2000s. Kind of outgrew professional wrestling, and so I knew of Ring of Honor, but I can't say that I really was ever a hardcore fan of Ring of Honor. I would get to know the stars of Ring of Honor when they came to the WWE, like Seth Rollins and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Now I didn't know who Kevin Steen was. I knew who El Generico was again because I would visit these wrestling channels on YouTube and I would see these wrestling channels, but in passing, you know what I mean? Not really well invested. So anyway, this is huge news for the wrestling world. But then again, I question: is it a good thing? As AEW starts to buy up more independent territories and WWE starts to buy them up, that's bad because it's just like in the 80s. You know what I mean? In the 80s, in the 60s and 70s in wrestling, there was so many, um, there was territories, there was regional promotions out of every state, out of different countries. You know what I mean? Like Puerto Rico had their own territory, Mexico had their own promotions and still do to this day. Um, but in the United States, there was so many different territories, and then WWE started buying up a bunch of territories when they went national, and then Jim Crockett Promotions started buying up the other territories that WWE didn't buy up, like Mid South Wrestling, and then it wasn't anywhere for the guys to really wrestle other than Jim Crockett Promotions that became WCW and the WWE, which was at that time the WWF. So that's why they created ECW because they needed an alternative. And then ECW came out, and then a bunch of other indie wrestling feds came out. And then when ECW and WCW closed their doors, it was nobody. You know, it was just the WWE. So it was a bunch of promotions. Then it was two. Then it was three, and then it was one, and then it was two, and then it was three again, and now it's back to two. Because there doesn't seem like there's going to be a third competitor to challenge the billionaires of Tony Khan and Vince McMahon. Only two promotions. Now, I do admire Tony Khan's devotion to wrestling. He's a wrestling fan. He grew up a wrestling fan his whole life. He watched the NWA. He watched the old school WWF. He watched WCW. You know what I mean? So He's a wrestling fan for sure. You know what I mean? So that's good. He's not gonna allow himself like Vince McMahon to be influenced by these Hollywood writers that don't really know anything about wrestling and took the WWE in the direction that they took the WWE in. But it's just sad for the wrestlers because say you're like Chavo Guerrero, right? And WWE don't want you, Impact Wrestling don't want you, um and AEW don't want you, then you're out of wrestling. You know what I mean? You go back on the indies, the really small promotions, but that's not really a living, really, or you're a wrestler that's just starting out. If it was a lot of wrestling promotions, like it is in the UK, for example, then it would be good. But it's not a lot of wrestling promotions. The more wrestling promotions there are, the better. You don't want to really go overseas, especially if you don't want to really go overseas to the UK or to Japan. You have really no other option but the WWE or but AEW. So the more other independent promotions that WWE and AEW buy up, they're like two little Pac-Mans. You know, they're buying up everything and they're becoming conglomerates because what other wrestling promotion that's going to start up that could really compete with AEW or WWE? Tony Khan has so much money. He has his hands in soccer, he has his hands in football, and now he has his hands in wrestling. And Vince McMahon, not only does he have the money, but he has the legacy behind it. He's the WWE. You know what I mean? Like the oldest national wrestling promotion in the world. But I guess it's like anything else in business. You know what I mean? You have the little local local mom and pop stores that are like analogous to the indie promotions, and then you have the big Walmart come along and they buy up all the other little stores. We saw this happen years ago with videos. When Betamax's first and then VHS's later came out in the 80s, in the late 70s and early 80s, you had a lot of video stores that were independent video stores that, some guy who hit the lottery or some guy that just came into some money, um, purchased. And then in the 90s, Blockbuster Video came along and Blockbuster Video took them all over as a big conglomerate and became, bought them out. And then Blockbuster Video, Blockbuster Video itself was taken out of the game by Netflix. And then now Netflix has a lot of different other competitors like HBO Max, like Disney Plus. And it'd be different if like AEW and the WWE were gonna keep these little independent promotions still running as a part of them, affiliated but a separate branch, able autonomous, able to do its own thing, kind of like how the NWA promotions were. The NWA had a lot of different promotions, a lot of different, like I said, territories, and they were all able to operate on their own independently with their own bookers, their own promoters to make their own decisions. Then, except when it came to the world champion. World champion would be one world champion. He would travel all around to all the different territories, and he was still there. And they were all under that NWA umbrella, but they were able to still do their own thing. So if a wrestler wasn't the champion and he was unhappy, he or she was unhappy with the way he was being presented, on that local TV in that local city, in that or that local group of cities, he could go to somewhere else and it would be completely different. Kind of like analogous to how the individual states are treated. Every individual state has their own rights. They're able to govern their own way. The only thing they cannot violate the the state constitutions cannot override or contradict the federal constitution. But in terms of legality, they're able to do their own thing. If promotions would be able to function in that way, under that umbrella, and be able to still do their own thing and be able to still employ talent, then that'd be a good thing, even if they're under the AEW or WWE umbrellas. But not have them not function anymore, not have them not exist anymore, not have them be the mom and pop shops to AEW or WWE's blockbuster. I don't agree with that. I think the more promotions, the better off it is for the talent. Because say you got somebody again, like I said, it's Chavo Guerrero or Cesaro. Cesaro has been let out of his WWE contract, and AEW doesn't seem interested in him, maybe because they don't see a lot of marketability in him. Now he is Swiss, so he does speak Italian or German or French. He's multilingual, so he can go over to those countries, to Italy, to Germany, or to France and wrestle. But I don't really know if those wrestling scenes, the wrestling scenes in those countries are really prosperous, or even if you want to go into those countries right now with all the turmoil that Europe is currently experiencing. So, with territories drying up or being incorporated into AEW in North America, where does that leave you? Mexico, where they're known for not really paying their wrestlers, or Japan. If you're really good in the ring and you have really good skills in the ring, you could get over and be popular in New Japan Pro Wrestling, especially if you adapt yourself to the strong style. So that's good. You know what I mean? But from what I understand, they don't work as much. They work a really lighter schedule, which is good. And American guys and European guys and Westerners have gone over to Japan and became really popular. You know what I mean? Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Terry Gordy, so many guys, Daniel Bryan, uh, big over there. AJ Styles, Cody Rhodes, New Japan Pro Wrestling is crazy. But ROH tying in with AEW, it makes sense because the first show that Cody Rhodes ever did, that he made the bed with Dave Meltzer, that really was the early seeds of AEW, was an ROH show um when he was wrestling in ROH. He really took ROH to the next level, and it was ROH that really was like the mother organization of AEW. So it does make sense. But I guess they were flirting with each other and now they're officially married. But we'll see what this partnership brings about in the coming years with AEW and for Ring of Honor. Will AEW get a streaming service deal with HBO Max, perhaps? I heard that. I heard that Tony Khan is in talks with HBO Max, and which is good because the streaming services are competing with each other. Peacock has the WWE exclusively WWE content, so AEW, they don't have a huge library. They have only 3 years of history. But if they buy up all these little independent promotions and allow them to function as subsidiaries of AEW, then they'll have more intellectual properties to their tape libraries, and that's awesome. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Peace.